Hello everyone, and welcome to lesson 3.5, which is on order of operations. Now, you might know order of operations as PEMDAS. When I was in school, I learned it as Please Excuse My Dear Aunt Sally. That was just our acronym and our phrasing of how we remembered everything. But PEMDAS stands for 6 separate things that we will see in math and that we have to deal with solving. The first of those is parentheses. The second is exponents. The third is multiplication. The fourth is division. The fifth is addition. And the last is subtraction. Now, maybe we know that, but anytime we are dealing with how to solve order of operations problems, there are a couple things that we need to understand. The first thing that we need to understand is that parentheses can really include any grouping symbol. That includes parentheses, that includes brackets, that includes the squiggly lines that are called braces. Any of those are included here in our parentheses. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that even though there are 6 separate things that are listed here, there are really only 4 steps. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you where the divisions are for those 4 steps. The first is right here, after parentheses. The second is right here, after exponents. And the third is right here in between division and addition. So what that basically tells me is that my first step is to take care of anything inside the parentheses. Then we move on to anything with an exponent. Then we move on to anything that is multiplication and division. And since multiplication and division are grouped together, we are going to solve those left to right. So we just start on the left-hand side of our math problem and we work our way towards the right. The last is here, which is addition, subtraction, and again we solve that going left to right. So there it is. 4 steps for order of operations. We do anything inside of parentheses first, then we move on to anything with an exponent, then we move on to multiplication and division, going left to right throughout the problem. Then we do everything that's addition and subtraction, again moving left to right through the problem. So let's take a look at some examples. When we bring our examples up here, you notice that I still have our PEMDAS written on the left. Right, we have step 1, we have step 2, we have step 3, we have step 4. That's just going to help us know that we're doing things in the right order and be a refresher for us to solve some of these problems. So, our very first problem is 5 parentheses 10 minus 1 close parentheses squared plus 7. So immediately, the very first thing comes to mind is that there's a lot going on in the problem. And I mentioned this in our previous lessons, but I'll say it again here, is don't freak out. Don't freak out over long problems. Don't freak out over lots that you have to do. The purpose of order of operations is to give you an order to do things. It's to give you a step-by-step process to solve problems. And as long as you follow that order, you're going to be okay. You can't do more than one step at a time. So don't look at the problem as a whole. Look at it as things that you need to do in a certain order. So, our very first thing that we look at is our parentheses. How do I take care of what's inside my parentheses? Okay, well, cool. That's just 10 minus 1. All right, so if that's 10 minus 1, we know that 10 minus 1 is 9. And then all I have to do is just rewrite everything else. All right, cool. So we have 5 times 9 squared plus 7. Well, now we look at our second thing. Our second thing is exponents. All right, cool. So we got our exponents. What's being applied with our exponents? Okay, cool. It's 9 squared. So that ends up being 5 times 81 plus 7. And solving that, we can see that as we've followed our order of operations, we've taken care of everything that we need to take care of. And we've only done one thing at a time. So, our third step is multiplication or division. I take a look. Yes, I have multiplication right there on the left-hand side, so that's what I'm going to do. So we multiply 5 times 81, and we get 405 plus 7. There's only one thing left to do here, and we add 405 plus 7 to get us 412, and we're done. So, even though that problem was really long, even though there was lots of parts and pieces to it, we simply just started with order of operations, started with parentheses, took care of that. Then we moved on to the exponents, took care of that. Then the multiplication division step, took care of that. And then finally that left us with one addition problem, and we solved that and we got to our answer. All of your order of operations problems will be like that. I cannot guarantee that every step is going to be in there, but if we follow the correct order in how we solve things, we're going to be okay. All right, so number 2. Number 2 says 4 plus 5 times 2 minus 9. So this is just a string of numbers and operators. So 4 plus 5 times 2 minus 9. Well, we start with our order of operations. Parentheses. Do we have any parentheses? No. Okay, so we move on to the next step. Exponents. Do we have any exponents? No. Okay, so we move on to the next step. Multiplication and division. Do we have any multiplication and division? Yes, we do. Okay, so where's our multiplication and division? It's right here in the middle. All right, so we take care of that. So we know that 5 times 2 is 10, and we just rewrite everything else. So that's 4 plus 10 minus 9. All right, so now we have all our multiplication and division. Now we move on to addition and subtraction. Remember, we have addition and subtraction. We have a couple different things that we have to do, but in order to solve it, we start on the left side and move our way to the right. So where we start is just the left side. 4 plus 10. It's the first thing we come to. 4 plus 10 is 14. That leaves us with 14 minus 9. And 14 minus 9 is 5. We get to our final answer. All right. So, now that we've done a couple of those, let's move on to question 3, which gives us the question, where do the missing parentheses belong? So, we know that we need to get 12 here. And what do we need to do in order to get 12? So, parentheses wise, the parentheses could either be around the first 2 problems, it could either be around the middle 2 numbers here, or it could be around the last 2 numbers. All right, so we know that we have 3 options there to put parentheses. Let's just start by checking. If I put parentheses around the first 2 numbers, what does that give me? Well, 16 divided by 8, we would have to do first because it's in parentheses. So 16 divided by 8 is 2. Well, then after that, we would have to do the multiplication, because multiplication comes before addition and subtraction, right? So we would end up with 2 minus 12, and 2 minus 12 does not give me 12. Okay, so we know that parentheses can't go around the first two numbers. What if they went around the second two numbers? Well, if we solve that, that would give me 16 divided by, and then 8 minus 4 we would have to do first, so that's 4, and then times 3. Well, moving from left to right, I would have to do 16 divided by 4 first, which is 4, times 3, which is 12. That actually works out. So by trial and error and following the order of operations once the parentheses gets put into the problem, I was able to figure out that the parentheses need to go around the 8 minus 4. Because doing that, I am able to get 12 out of my problem. So, some of these problems, especially these where they ask you where parentheses belong, will take a little bit of trial and error. But just know you're going to put them around a different grouping of numbers, and you might even get lucky with some multiple choice that helps you with that process so you can test out which ones work. All right, now we move on to our last problem. Our last problem for order of operations has 2 times 5 squared plus 6. So again, we start with our order of operations with parentheses. Do we have any parentheses? No. So we move on. Do we have any exponents? Yes, we do, right there. So our exponent 5 squared is 25. So that ends up giving me 2 times 25 plus 6 after I rewrite everything. Then we move on to multiplication and division. We got multiplication right there, which is 50 plus 6, and our final answer here is 56. So hopefully by seeing some of these examples, this can help you with order of operations. Please know that regardless of how long the problem is or how complicated it looks at the beginning, it's not as bad as it seems if you just take one step at a time. Don't freak out. Take one step at a time. Follow the order of operations, starting with parentheses, working all the way down to addition and subtraction, and you should be in great shape. Hopefully this has helped you out, and as always, if you have any other questions, please let me know.